in front of former U.S. President Chester Arthur's house at 123 Lexington Avenue, between 28th and 29th Streets on the east side of the street. And this store, restaurant, Middle Eastern Kalustians, has been there I think for 30, 40 years. But this is the house where Chester Arthur was sworn in as the next president of the United States when he was the vice president, and James Garfield finally succumbed to his gunshot wound injuries from an assassination, and Chester Arthur took over, I believe, as the 20th president of the U.S. And then he was sworn in by a local judge, and then I think when he went down to Washington, D.C., then he was sworn in by a federal judge. But this is where it happened. And it's in a row of brownstones. I think I read they were built in like the 1840s. And Chester Arthur was from upstate, but he moved to New York, and I think he was one of the few presidents who was never previously elected to office. Just moved up the ranks at the customs house. It was before collected income tax, so the U.S. got their money from import tariffs. Moved up the ranks and was in that office, and due to various perks of the day, he was able to keep a percentage of the tariffs that he collected, and he made the equivalent of more than $1 million a year, maybe well above $1 million a year as a public servant. So it was really scandalous, and they finally put an end to that. And it was both parties, Democrat and Republican, wanted a piece of that action. He was in the Republican Party. And when he served like more than 3 years, because Garfield died midway through the first year of his term, and from what I read also, he didn't get along well with Garfield. He didn't like Garfield for some reason, didn't go see Garfield when Garfield was trying to rebound. He just came here and stayed here at his house in Manhattan, even though he was the vice president. And so they came and got him and told him, okay, you're now the president. And his wife passed away before he became president, so she never got to be the first lady. She died rather young of pneumonia, and from what I heard, it was not a very happy marriage. They had a couple of kids, but he spent a lot of time out with his political friends and cronies over at the Fifth Avenue Hotel. We'll take a look at that site. The hotel is no longer there, but I guess it was a big Republican hangout. So this is the neighborhood that this house is now in. I guess it would have been considered well-to-do at one time, Lexington Avenue, south of Midtown. If I can stick out into the busy traffic, you can see the Chrysler building up the street. I'll see if I can get a better angle of it. As soon as the traffic stops, I'll go out in the street here. So there's the Chrysler building. Beautiful Art Deco building in Midtown. So this might be part of one of the Little Indias. There's actually now a couple of Little Indias in New York. And not just in Manhattan, but in the whole New York area. So anyway, getting back to their marriage, supposedly she wasn't very happy, but like I said, she died young. And then after he served his term, his party was so not enamored with him that they didn't want him to run for re-election. And they picked somebody else who lost. They just didn't want to stick with Chester Arthur. He's another one of these 19th century presidents after the Civil War who did not advance civil rights and just wasted time. Black America was trying to get on its feet after the Civil War, and he's one of the presidents who just didn't do anything to help. And he didn't advance the cause of women suffrage, the right of women to vote. So he's just another space filler And these, unfortunately, are some of the presidents that have lived in New York City. A more progressive one was Teddy Roosevelt, who also grew up right near here in the East 20s, but he also, I don't think, helped too much in the way of civil rights or women's rights. So anyway, we've looked at this building long enough. It's probably the least good-looking building on the block. It could maybe use the brownstone veneer that the other brownstone type houses have on this street. But it's an interesting area. It's south of Midtown. You might call this Nomad. Doesn't really make any sense because Madison's a north-south street, but it's basically the area around Madison Avenue going north of Union Square. So we're just walking south on Lexington, walk down here for a block, and then I'll try to find that 5th Avenue Hotel site that Chester Arthur liked to hang out. And there's a couple of other points of interest in the political vein in this area, so we'll see what we can see. All right, we'll keep looking. Just happened to be passing through Chester Arthur's old name, and I thought I'd take a shot again of his house, see if it's a little more happening at night. That store, Callustian's, is open. I just know that he took the oath of office on one of the upper floors, so that's all I can add to the equation. But Callustian's has got a good part of the block, and it's a great place to get Indian food or a back and foot rub. Get to ask for the Chester Arthur special, and I'm sure they're going to look at you with a question mark on their face. Okay, that's it for this block of Lexington Avenue between 28th and 29th. Former home of Chester and Nell and their 2 kids. 205th Avenue, the site of the former 5th Avenue Hotel that Chester Arthur liked to hang out a lot at and concoct his political future, along with the other members of the Republican Party of the day in the 1870s, 1880s. And it was demolished and replaced with this impressive building, which is called the 5th Avenue Building. And here's a plaque designating as such a clock restored by Tiffany. Let's just go across the street and we'll take a look back at the 5th Avenue Hotel, right down the street from the Flatiron Building, which I talk about in another video on Madison Square Park. So, I walked right by this statue of Chester Alan Arthur when I was doing a video yesterday on Madison Square Park. So here he is amongst the foliage. He was the 21st president of the US, so I was one off. Garfield was the 20th, and I think that depicts him as being a little slimmer than I've seen in a lot of other pictures. So, and now I'll find his political crony on the other end of the park. So here is Chester Arthur's crony, who was a US Senator, Roscoe Conkling, and Roscoe was very involved with doling out patronage to people who supported the Republican cause in the 1870s and 1880s. And he's not a bad looking guy, but I guess he was a real ladies' man. And I think he even had an affair and was chased by another congressman, something like that. So anyway, some people felt that he didn't deserve a statue along with some of the other bigger names here in the park, but he got one. paid for by his friends. And I believe this Episcopal church is where Chester Arthur and Nell Arthur were married. At the corner of Park Avenue South and 22nd Street. Calvary Episcopal.